Welcome back. I'm Stephanie Seving, and this is the Quilt Addicts Anonymous July Block of the Month tutorial. This month we're going to be making double pinwheels, and we're going to show you a nice easy way to do it to where you don't have to worry about any of those triangles stretching out on the bias. As always, I'm making this quilt in two colorways so you can see how the different fabrics turn it into an entirely different look. And you can download free printable instructions on the Quilt Addicts Anonymous website. Just click on the Block of the Month tab and the block that you need the instructions for, and you'll get the link right there. So our double pinwheel starts out a lot like the half square triangles, and we've done a lot of them so far, so you all should be experts. We're going to draw a line from point to point on the wrong side of your large light pink square. And then we're going to lay them right sides together with your other fabric, and then we're going to sew on a scant 1/4 inch on either side of that drawn line on both sides, and then we're going to cut them apart and press them open so that the seam is underneath the dark side of the fabric. Now normally at this point we square up our half square triangles, but you absolutely do not want to do that for your double pinwheels because we still have a couple more steps and we need to square them up at the very end, otherwise you might not have enough fabric to make everything nice and square. So what we're going to do is we're going to draw a line on the wrong side of our half square triangle from point to point, and then we're going to lay it right sides together with our third fabric and sew a scant 1/4 inch on either side of that drawn line. Now when we cut these apart, we're going to have mirror image blocks. You may remember this when we were working on the piece border. Now for this block we're only going to use one of those, but don't worry, the others aren't going to go to waste. We're going to use them in the October block. Now what you want to make sure you use the correct half for this block is when the large half square triangle is in the bottom left of where you're looking at, you want your purple 1/4 square triangle to be on the right. And if that's what you're seeing, then that's the side you want. If you need some further clarification on that, just go download the printable instructions on quiltaddictsanonymous.com, and there's a real clear diagram that makes it a little easier to make sure you grab the right half of the block for this month. So when we press open the double pinwheel, we want to make sure that the seam is underneath the large half square triangle. That's because it's the path of least resistance, and it will ensure that your block lays nice and flat. So now we're finally ready to trim the double pinwheel so that it is a perfect 4.5 inches square so that it'll fit nicely with the rest of our block. There are a couple of things that you need to pay attention to make sure that all your points end up in the right spot, but I'm going to talk you straight through it. So I'm using my 6.5 inch square ruler here. I really like it for this task. And I'm looking at a couple of things when I am getting ready to trim this. One, I'm looking to make sure that my 45-degree line is right on that seam line where the half square triangle meets the side that has the 2/4 square triangles on it. And then I'm looking for my 4.5 inch line, which is this dotted line here, to make sure that it is either right on the edge or there's a little bit hanging off. And I also want to make sure that I've got a little bit of fabric on either side here. And then the last thing I check out is to make sure that where this point is, where these two come together, that's right at the 4.5 inch mark. And as long as that point is there and you have this 45-degree line going across your seam line, then all your points are going to end up right where they're supposed to be when you go to put your block together. So now I'm ready to cut along the side and the top. You can just sweep that off to the side. And then I'm going to flip it around and I'm going to line it up again. And I still have that 45-degree line going across that seam line. But this time I'm lining up my 4.5 exactly with that edge because we just trimmed it and squared it up. And I'm still checking to make sure that this point is right where that 4.5 line meets the edge of that ruler. And if you want to give it a little bit of a tug on that dog ear there to make it fit, that's okay. Now I'm not cutting off a whole lot extra on this block. Some blocks are going to have a little more that you cut off than others. But this is really an important step to make sure that your blocks turn out nice and square and that your points end up where they're supposed to be. Now when you sew the rest of this block together, it's really important to make sure that you sew it in rows at a time and then put your rows together. and that will help make sure that it's really easy to put the final border together at the end of the year. So when we press these, we want to press them a specific way so that it's really easy for our seams to abut and make our joints go together nice and tight. So what we want to do is we want to press it so that the seams are going to go underneath the double pinwheels. Now we're ready to put the final quilt block together. We've got it constructed in rows and we pressed our seams underneath the double pinwheels. So that'll make it really easy to pin. We always want to pin in the right side of that seam allowance. It's going to be your left on screen. And that's because as we sew along, we're going to sew until we get right in this seam allowance here with the needle. And then you take your needle out, or then you can remove your pin while the needle is in the down position. And that needle will hold your pieces together right where they need to be so that you have a good, accurate join. So do that for both sides. Sew your blocks together, and then we'll have some special pressing instructions to make sure that this border goes together right. So I've got my block together, but I still have to press it. And in order for our final border to go together really easily, we're going to change the direction that we press the row seams every other month. So this month we're going to be pressing them so that all the seams are underneath the center seam. So now we've got our finished block for July. Make sure you go to quiltaddictsanonymous.com so that you can download your free printable instructions to go along with this video. And thanks for following along, and as always, happy quilting.